This is Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Beau Tiffany.
Hi, Virginia. Thanks for coming on Digital Voices today. How are you?
I'm good, Beau. Thank you for having me on Digital Voices. I'm looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I saw your profile and was inspired to have you on. I also have a history of traumatic accident and having to recover from that. And so it pulled on a heartstring for me, seeing your profile and what you do. And I thought that would offer some valuable insight to my listeners as well as to me. So with that said, let me dig a little bit at your roots. Where are you from?
I'm from South Africa. I'm based in Port Elizabeth in South Africa, but I was born in Cape Town in South Africa and then moved to Port Elizabeth. Yeah.
Big family, small family?
Big family. I'm the youngest of 8 children.
Oh, okay.
My dad has passed on already. My mom is 91.
Wow.
And I have 6 sisters and 1 brother. My brother's just before me. And ironically, this weekend I was home and I was counting the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. My mom has got 22 grandchildren and she's got 28 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
So it's a big family.
Yeah, what a legacy. That's great. So pretty close
Yes.
as a family too, I would imagine.
Yes, we are. We definitely are pretty close.
Yeah. What kind of interests did you have? What were you into when you were younger?
As a child, I used to love running. I loved playing netball. I played netball from primary into high school, and I still play to this day. Loved reading, and church was my go-to place, my happy place. It still is. And yeah, I always used to love to help. And I think that's why I went and studied social work. So those were my interests. And obviously reading, I could travel through the stuff that I was reading.
Yeah. As an adult, have you been able to travel a little bit and tangibly connect with some of that?
Yes. I've traveled quite a lot. I've been to America twice. I've been to London thrice. I've been to Israel, and I've been to Mozambique, our neighbor. Yeah, so I've traveled quite a lot. Yeah.
Nice. It's a great experience traveling. It must have been eye-opening to see the different cultures. I've done a lot of traveling, and I know that was a big takeaway for me, is getting out of my own backyard, if you will, and being able to meet other people with other cultures and other backgrounds with their ethnicity. And I always found that really insightful, because sometimes we have a perception of other people, and then when we actually meet them, we find out they're not anything close to what our perception might have been. So, yeah, I really like that.
It's true. It's true. Ironically, I never used to like to get out of my comfort zone or go stray far away from home or change places because of my scars, obviously. But for me now, travel is one of my most favorite things to do, because I know that I can touch people's lives far and wide. Yeah.
Can I ask, so when did you get your scars? What happened? What's the story behind that?
I was 22 months old, Beau, and my sisters were making a fire in the backyard, and unfortunately they had an accident with the methylated spirits, which fell on me, and I caught a light. So yeah, I've had scars from a very early age, as early as I could remember, because it happened when I was 22 months old. Yeah.
When did you start to realize that you weren't like everybody else?
It was obviously all the stares that I got, and the bullying and the mocking and the name calling and the labels, and also parents treating me differently. Some didn't want me to play with their kids because, according to them, I looked ugly. And yeah, I think I was probably about 6, 7 years old at the time.
It's horrible. Did your family kind of embrace you and show you extra love and help to shield you from
Yes.
some of that?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
They did. If I could ask for a family to be born in, if I could choose, I would choose the exact same family. There's the saying that you can't choose your family, but I would choose this family over and over again. So they embraced me. They were my safe harbor at the end of each day, encouraged me to obviously to be able to live through the next day until I get home. So yeah, my family has always been my safe harbor.
When did life start to get a little easier for you?
I always had friends. I always had friends. I had good friends. I have friends that I had when I was probably 6 years old that are still my friend. And I've had friends from primary school and we're still friends to this day.
Yeah.
So I've had good friends that I think if it weren't for them, I probably would have struggled growing up. The challenges were still always there. They couldn't always protect me like I would have wanted to, but they were always there for me. And the change came in my life when I was about 17 years old. And I had gone for an interview for a scholarship because I wanted to study social work.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the other questions that the lady asked, the one question that she asked me was whether I was a confident person. And because I wanted the scholarship, I said yes. And at that time, my confidence was at an all-time low. And as I left, because she said to me, without confidence, I won't be able to interact with people, address crowds or large groups. And I said to her, yes, I'm very confident. And as I left your office, I realized and I could hear my mom's voice saying that if you tell lies, God is going to show up that lie. And that U-turn in my life came when I realized that I had to live that lie. And it was living that lie that brought the U-turn and the change in my life. And I am really thankful for that opportunity, an opportunity that I was almost going to miss because a teacher told me that I won't be able to get a bursary from the state at the time. They were only giving to teachers and nobody else. And I said to him, okay, I will rather wait till they tell me that they don't give bursaries to us. And that was the application that actually brought about a change in my life. And I got the scholarship, by the way.
That's amazing. And it's amazing how God works. I know that you found your faith early. How did you find your faith? I
grew up in a Catholic home. And then at the age of 16, I visited a charismatic church and I got to experience a different kind of relationship with God. Mm. And that was what got me through everything, that God has created me as his masterpiece. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm the apple of his eye. And I was like, so why do people tell me that I'm ugly? Why do people think that there's something wrong with me when I know that God created me? And that's the time I said to myself, if anybody has a problem with the way I look, that is their problem, not mine. Yeah. And that is how I managed to really forge through life, because I knew that I was beautiful. On the day of that bursary interview, when I started living the lie that I was telling that I was confident, I got onto a bus, which was full. But before that interview, I would never have ventured further into the bus if I saw that the first two seats were full, because I didn't want people to look at me. And that day was the day that I went and I sat on the very last seat in the bus. And I also realized that some people didn't even notice me. And I also realized that I was beautiful. Yeah. We carry things along with us, and we don't realize that not all the baggage we're carrying with us was ours to carry. Amen.
It reminds
Yeah.
me of that parable of footsteps in the sand.
Where He carries us through the difficult times.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
I take strength in that parable quite a bit. So for you, did you have anybody that you connected with during your high school and early years that helped to influence you? Or where did you get your sense of community in that wanting to serve within social working?
Oh, I think it also, because I grew up in hospital. Hospital was my second home, and the way that social workers dealt with me, with the care and the concern and the love that they showed. And I was in grade 1 when I told everybody that I'm going to be a social worker. And it throughout my life, it never changed. And my middle name is Teresa, so people used to call me Mother Teresa. But I've always just felt the need to serve. I love serving. It brings me so much joy just to serve people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing the reward that we get from giving. And it's something that I don't think people talk about enough. Sometimes I think it's a greater joy to give than it is to receive.
It is. It is.
Talk about college a little bit. You decided to go for social work.
Yes.
What were those steps
Yes.
like? I'm not from your area, so how does that work over there? You have a university, right?
Beau, say that again. I didn't
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. You have a university there in Port Elizabeth? Is that where you went?
No, it's in Cape Town. The one in Cape Town, the University of the Western Cape.
Okay.
That's where I studied. And if I didn't go for that interview, Beau, and had that U-turn happening in my life, I don't think I would have survived college. I don't think I would have survived university. Because prior to that interview, about probably a month before then, one of our teachers took some of the learners from school and we went to the exact same university. And I made sure that I was in the center of our little group. I didn't want people to see me at all. So I made sure that I remained in the center so that, nobody could see me. And it was probably 3 or 4 months later then when I started my social work studies at the very same university, a totally different person, totally different. My mom worked night shift at the hospital, so she couldn't go with me on that day. And from my school, I was the only girl in my class, and then 3 of the boys that were in class with me, but they started teaching. So they weren't with me at the time. I was all on my own. But I thank God for that change that came because I could hold my own amongst the crowds of all the new people.
Did that come from within, or do you think that was part divine?
It was divine.
I thought so too.
It was truly divine.
He
In my
gave
own
you a
strength, I wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, I think he gave you a strength to be able to do that. That's amazing.
Yes.
What was that experience like in college? How was that for you? And is it a 4-year like it is here in the States, or how does that work over there?
It's 4 years. It was a great experience. I met some amazing people there. The first few days were obviously testing the waters and checking out some friends. And one friend that I met back then is still my best friend, and she's the one that I always visit. She lives in London now. Yeah, I made some good friends. My work ethic that I had at school, I carried that with me through to varsity. And for the first 2 years, I got Dean's Awards and stuff because I just plowed myself into my schoolwork.
Yeah.
And then I met a boy in my 3rd year. And it went downhill.
Oh, no.
Yeah. When you stray from your parents' teachings and the teachings of the Bible, we allow the enemy just to pass around and do things that we shouldn't do. So I failed my 3rd year and I fell pregnant. I had my son, and 10 days later, I went back because I had a dream of finishing my degree, and I did.
That's great.
And I did.
And everything happens for a reason. So there's lessons that you've obviously learned during that time that you carried forward. Every stumble like that is an opportunity for God to teach us something. And the blessing out of
Yes,
that too is you have a son. So I think that
yes,
that's
yes,
as well. So you dove back into school and only 11 days after birth. It's amazing.
yes. I went back. Yeah, I was young and still full of energy and all of that. Yeah, I went back.
What I wouldn't
Yeah.
give to have a little of the energy from my youth. You're able to recover then your academics and you graduated. What was the first steps into social work like for you?
I was so excited because on the day that I wrote my final subject, the week prior, I had gone for an interview, and the friend that I said I met at varsity that lives in London now, she was resigning from that job. And she had then, remember, I stayed a year behind. So she went ahead of me. She finished before me, and she had recommended me to the organization. So I went for the interview. And the day of when I wrote my last subject, I had a phone call. And they said, you passed the interview. We would like to have you on board. All you need to do now is pass your final exam. And I was the first one in my class that had a job waiting.
Oh,
So
amazing.
I walked into class and I was like, guys, I have a job. I have a job. So yeah, yes, it was amazing walking into that role. And ironically enough, I'm a teetotaler, so I don't drink anything. I don't drink not even champagne, unless the champagne is alcohol free. Our dad, though, was the opposite. He drank a lot. As a child, I didn't understand most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up I just couldn't stand people who were intoxicated. I just had my personal issues with them. And my first job as a social worker was for the South African National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. God has a sense of humor, hey?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yes, yes.
He had a plan for you.
Yes, it did. It did. I worked there educating people on the dangers of alcoholism, on the dangers of drugs. And somehow I learned that my dad had a disease. And if he had sought help, he would have gotten the help that he needed, but he never did. And that whole process, those years in that role, made me more open to people with drug dependency problems.
Sure.
I could embrace them, I could speak to them, I could try and get them onto the right path. So all of the maybe resentment, if you will, that I had prior to that job was gone. So yeah, that was also divine.
Was it because you were able to relate to your father a
Yes.
little bit more and understand him? I think
I couldn't relate to him. It was too late for me to relate to him because he had passed away when I was 12 years old. So for me, it was just internal healing that happened and understanding this.
for me, a big key to forgiveness is understanding.
Yeah.
You obviously worked with the community. Being from America, our urban areas are a lot different than yours. And
Mhm.
Africa is so diverse. Not all the countries are the same. There's such a disparity between them. What was your region like, and what was it like working with the people in your community?
My community, if I look at where I grew up, it's almost like what you would call the projects. And yeah, growing up, there was a lot of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, violence against women, children. So I don't think that we are unique in our situation. I think it's like that everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had fewer role models at the time. As a child, when television was something that was in certain homes, not in everybody's homes. So we didn't have an outside world other than what we knew. Yes, compared to children now that have the whole world in sort of their hands,
Yeah.
knowing what's happening, the only thing that one could rely on was the promises of God, where he, in his word in Jeremiah 29:11, where he says, I know the plans I have for you. There are plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And that would be the things that I would cling to, and I can do everything. I could do all things because of the strength that Christ has given me.
Right.
Those were the things that were my sort of what kept me focused and what kept me going. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also going into some of the tougher homes within your community,
Yes.
within the role
Yes.
that you're serving. And so that
Yeah.
had to have come with some lessons and insights. Can you share some of what you might
Definitely. They growing up for me, 8 children in one house with 2 bedrooms, for me that was normal. And then I would see that other people didn't even have that. They would have one big room where everybody would sleep. There was obviously also places where I went where things that I saw were things that we weren't exposed to, like big houses with flush toilets inside the house, big bedrooms, beautiful homes. But then also I would realize that with all of this, they still are experiencing the same problems that we are experiencing from where I come from. So
It's ironic,
yes, definitely. So problems are not unique to a specific social grouping or a social hierarchy.
Right.
Those challenges don't choose where you're from and who you are. Things can happen to anybody. So that for me was a huge eye opener. That growing up, you want these big mansions and you want flashy cars and all of that. And for me, I realized that's not the be all and end all, because these problems, these people also have the same problems as we have with the little that we have.
Interesting talking as we have the last few minutes. It reminds me of a guest that I had. He wrote a book called The Molecule of More, and it's about the dopamine molecule that humans secrete. And it's like a biological high, if you will, but it comes with the way that he described it is Christmas time comes around and the kids are all excited to open up the presents. But 10 minutes later, they're playing with the wrappings and the boxes rather than the toys. And it wasn't about the actual gift. It was about the experience of waiting for it and that dopamine that comes with that. And I found that interesting because it applies to a lot of different things in life. And as we're talking about social groups and classes and these particular issues that are common amongst all groups, they're not held to a social class or a certain income level. Everybody deals with something and it's all very similar. I think that's interesting because oftentimes people are like, oh, they have it so easy. The grass is always greener on the other side. But when you get to the other side, you realize that you still have the same issues, and learning how to deal with those are key. And I think God goes a long way. We need faith. We need someone for comfort as well, because life is tough. Now, you were in social working for how many years?
I was in social work for about 6 years, just normal community social work. And then I joined corporate. It's our railways and harbors. It's called Transnet. So it's all the South African railways and harbors, and I was at the harbor. And I joined them as the EAP practitioner, employee assistance practitioner. And the social work became slightly corporate. And I was reporting to a human resources manager. So I was now out of the normal welfare community kind of social work, and I went into corporate. And then I went and I equipped myself in the human resources field. And then I left HR completely I left social work completely after 4 years in Transnet, and I became a human resources manager. Sorry?
I was going to say, you must have carried some of what you learned from social work into the corporate field. Was it
Yes.
easier to relate to people? What kind of things did you carry over?
Look, social work has the theory of social work, or my education in social work has equipped me in a very big way for human resources. I have seen the difference between people who have studied social work and then went into human resources and people who just went and studied human resources. There's a competitive advantage that we have when it comes to really relating to people, building relationships, confidentiality, being assertive, yet being firm, yet in a caring way. Mm-hmm. Because from an HR point of view, you have to ensure that policies are adhered to, procedures are adhered to, people toe the line. And with my background, as much as there's policies and procedures, I have the empathy to understand what the issues are with employees, and am able to, with our policies, make sure that we can actually address that issue or help that employee. Because my social work background has allowed me to get a deeper insight into what the problem is. It's not just looking at it superficially, but I'm able to really delve deeper into emotional stuff, and am able to then, with all those, within the framework of those policies and procedures, be able to help or assist the employee. So the social work gives you a competitive advantage when you get into human resources.
Yeah, and it helped to humanize it as well, it sounds like.
Yes.
And translating what you were just saying, I thought that was key, that I really pulled out, is learning how to work with the individual, understanding truly their issues, and then trying to work with the policies with the individual in a proactive way. And I think that's amazing. We don't do that enough around my own area. So I think there's something to be learned there. You have continued to grow. What did you do after that? I know that you've been doing some motivational speaking and things like that. How did those steps start for you?
I'm still in human resources, though. I'm an HR consultant. I have my own consulting company, and I assist businesses with the human resources. But I have been speaking for quite a number of years, speaking since I finished university. Yeah, and I started speaking. Initially, it was quite emotional because I wasn't really 100% healed.
Sure.
And it's with all the talks that I did, that the healing also came. Because people would ask me questions and I would answer those questions. Some would make me think quite deep. Mm-hmm. And some would just be things that I never actually thought about. And with staring this question in the face, then I realized that I've actually never dealt with that. And I would become emotional about it. But yes, the talking opportunities or the speaking opportunities has also contributed to my healing, to my overall healing.
I often talk to my guest about a plan, a divine plan that people, as they look back, oftentimes see, whether that was a particular situation or people that influenced them into a certain direction. What I've been hearing out of your story is a divine plan. These things that were difficult for you, God set it up in a way that allowed you to both heal, strengthen, and then also heal others and carry this in a way that is amazing. Have you noticed that as you look back on your life? Do you see that yourself?
Yes. He's always been there, Bo. Even at times, maybe when I didn't even acknowledge him,
Mm.
I can look back and see that he's always been there. If I think back, I think I was probably 8 or 9 years old when I got to understand the full story of what happened to me. And then my question was but it's my family and I love them. And there's just no ways that I can be angry at them. And not realizing that at that tender age, God had instilled the gift of forgiveness in me. And I speak a lot on the freedom that forgiveness brings. Forgiveness, not for them, but for you.
Right.
And that is what helps with the healing. And I really thank God for that gift that He's given me, because it's something that I apply right across all spheres of my life.
Yeah.
I would just leave somebody and God, you know what to do with that. And it's done.
Yeah.
It's done. I can go as far, Bo, as even speaking to that person again, even though they've hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
but the hurt is gone. There's no resentment. There's nothing. Because God has taken care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Forgiveness is such a powerful force.
Yes.
And it is such, it's really, I just wish that people can forgive and move on, because they are in bondage from not being able to forgive.
Absolutely. And it's oppressive. The more weight that you
Yes.
put on yourself, it just gets heavy. And
Yep.
releasing those burdens, it's amazing what that does to your mental health, what it does for your life. Now, I know that we just talked about a little bit of, you've been talking since basically university times, and you speak about how to accept yourself, scars and all, and emphasize what there is life beyond your scars. I think that those are physical and metaphorical, and that's why I think there's so much insight there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you talk about and share some insights there with us, please?
One of the talks that I have is that if you just allow God to put you together, and I always start the talk with Humpty Dumpty, and Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. They didn't realize that there was a king greater than that king, a king that weaves you back together, broken pieces back together again with a strand of gold if you let him. And you are so much more valuable for having been broken and woven back together with a strand of gold by God, that the past pain, through his divine intervention, it disappears. But you need to accept him and have a relationship with him in order for you to be able to experience that you were gracefully broken and put together again. So that is one of the talks. There's talks that everything that God has intended for you is within you. He's given you everything. But because of the labels and the mocking and the names that people have been calling you, you rather believe those names. I'm not sure if you know what Velcro is, Beau. It's something that sticks. And that is what all those labels have been doing. You've been like Velcro, and it sticks to you. However, when you have an intimate relationship with God, you're not Velcro anymore, but you become Teflon. Teflon is that everything just slides off it. And no matter what people say, it's because the inside is right. The outside and what people say externally about you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because on the inside, you believe and you know that you are God's masterpiece. And that is what you will exude to the outside. Sometimes I will realize that people are staring at me, and then only later I realize, oh yes, they're looking at the scars. And that's that. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. It's those kind of things. And also I speak about normally when we start going into summer and I'm invited to come and speak. And I have the story, if it fits in with the theme, I speak about a different kind of weight loss because everybody's getting their bodies into shape for summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak about a different kind of weight loss where the baggage that you're carrying is not yours to carry, but you need to give it up. You need to ask God to take all of that baggage away. And there's, in His Word, He shows us how we can come to Him and how we can just make our desires known to Him. And when we commit everything to Him, He will establish our plans and He will establish our dreams and our goals. But we need to let go of the weight that is not ours to carry. So those are some of the things that I talk about, how young girls and with the selfie craze that we have, where they feel that they are not beautiful, it is all within you. I was 13 when I had my last operation, and it looked very ugly. When they took the bandages off, I cried and I confronted the doctor and I was like, why didn't you leave me the way I was? And that doctor told me that when that wound is healed, he said to me, you are beautiful now, but when that wound is healed, you'll be so much more beautiful. I never believed him then, until the day actually of the interview, when all of these things just fell into place and God just says, this is what I've destined for you. And my life changed that day. And with young people, I will always tell them that they are beautiful, that they are wonderfully and fearfully made, that they are God's masterpiece, that they are the apple of His eye. I want them to believe that, because when I believed it, and I believed that I was beautiful, I am His masterpiece, I became fearless, and life for me became limitless.
Yeah.
And that is those are the kind of talks that I do, that people need to realize what is inside of them and not what people say about them on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And only God can give you that revelation and that insight and that inner peace, that you are happy with who you are on the inside. And when you are happy with who you are on the inside, the outside actually doesn't matter.
Yeah. I thought of something, and it relates to what you just said. So you spoke about confidence before and how it took to get that. But loving yourself goes a long way in developing that confidence, and starting at the roots in learning to love yourself, whether that's looking in the mirror every day. And this is more to our listeners, but just telling yourself you're beautiful when you wake up and doing things for yourself. We often do things for everybody else, and we neglect ourselves sometimes. Take a time out during the week or in the month and just spoil yourself. Do something special. For you, you love to read. Maybe it's getting that new book and sitting down for a few hours reading it, It's super important in developing that. My time with you has been amazing. I think the insights that have come out have been really special. And I think God has definitely woven us together for this interview. What kind of plans do you have going forward?
My book is done, Beau. I need hopefully launching on the 26th of June.
Excellent. What's the name?
Scars That Propel.
Amazing. And will we be able to find you on Amazon, or how will our listeners be able to find that?
I'm still trying to figure that out. Okay. Yeah. But
I'll put a link in our description. Once you have that, I'll update this podcast, and then that way our listeners can find that.
Definitely.
What are your other future plans going forward? What's 2021 look like for you?
I'm doing a lot of parenting workshops as well, with especially foster parents. I want to travel. The corona doesn't allow us to, but I still want to travel.
Where's your
I've
next
done
bucket list item? Where's the next country?
I was looking at the Bahamas.
Oh, it's beautiful there. I've been there.
Yes, I'm looking at the Bahamas. So yeah, it depends on what happens with the virus and how freely we can travel.
Yeah.
And then I've just been equipping myself with some short courses, online courses, and yes, obviously taking my speaking career to the next level. Yeah.
I would like to see you start doing podcasts. I would like to see you start doing some online presence. I think that would be great for you as well.
Definitely.
Makes it accessible for all of us, which I think is a valuable thing. Anything I haven't covered, anything that we haven't talked about that you might want to bring up before I let you go today?
I always emphasize is at the end, when I've spoken to people, I always tell them that what's happened to you. I actually commented on, I don't know if J.R. Martinez. I commented on, he was a soldier in the American Army.
Okay.
And he got burned in an accident. And he was saying that he smiles when he looks, when he grew up, his mom always used to smile. And she says, and he asked her, why do you always smile no matter how difficult things are? She says she smiles because she's smiling about her blessings. I commented, and he also said something that he looks at what had happened to him, and it just pushed his life in a totally different direction, a direction that he loves. And I said to him, when you walk with God, things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Yeah.
And that is what I always want to leave with people, that when there's a lot of things, and it's not always that they happen for you, because some of the stuff is really bad, but God can turn that around if you let him. Mm-hmm. And what's happened to you is in all likelihood not your fault. But your healing is your responsibility. It's nobody else's. It is your responsibility. And also the labels that people put on you, their opinion shouldn't count. The opinion that is the most important is God's opinion. Mm-hmm. And that is why I use the quote of, I'm not sure whose it is, but what's right with you is the starting point. And what's wrong with you, or what other people say is wrong with you, is beside the point. Focus on what is right with you. Mm-hmm. And everything else won't matter. Yeah.
That's so true. It's just amazing. Sometimes we have a plan for our own lives, but then we realize that God might not have that same plan.
Yeah.
And it's funny because talking about that plan that I mentioned earlier, that divine plan, God has a way of kicking us back onto the path that we're needing to be on. And sometimes we are stubborn. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Mm-hmm. And then God will kick you a little harder until you finally budge, because he's an immovable object. He's the biggest lever there is. He can move anything. The insights that you've given us today, it is such a pleasure. I'd like to maybe touch base with you next year and just see how the book release went and try to promote that as much as possible. You are a beautiful person, and you have such a wonderful, amazing soul. And I really appreciate the time that you spent with me today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you that I could share my story with you and your listeners.
It was my pleasure.
This has been Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with BeauTiffany.podbean.com and follow Beau on social media by searching Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.